My guest today is Golda Schultz, the wonderful Golda Schultz, who I now refer to as the one who got away. Golda, that's because you were supposed to be coming here in January, and the Met Opera invited you to sing the Countess in Figaro. Is that right?
Yes, we're supposed to do that there.
What organization, no matter how big or small, would stand in the way of a dream performance like that? And it's with Nezet Sagan, right?
Yes, it's with Yannick Nezet-Sagan, and I'm really looking forward to finally getting to work with him in an operatic sense, because I think the first time and the only time so far that I've worked with him was in 2019 in the summer, where we did my first Mozart Requiem with him.
Oh.
So yeah, it took a while
fantastic.
before I did my Mozart Requiem, but finally have a Mozart Requiem under my belt.
And where did you do that? In New York?
That was in Saratoga Springs. So we did that with the Philadelphia Orchestra, and it was really great. So I got to sing with my really good friend Tara Era, a lovely mezzo-soprano.
Yes, of course. Tara's been here a couple of times.
Oh, yeah. She's such a regular recitalist. So, of course, you guys have met.
She's a riot.
She is. She's a very beautiful, beautiful human being. And it was really funny because we both realized, I think, on our first rehearsal, both Tara and I said to each other quietly in the dressing room, you know, this is my first Mozart Requiem, right? And so we both promised that we would really help each other with the harmonies to make sure that we sang in tune.
Oh, I love that. You know, I suspect from everything I've heard about you and read about you is that aside from your voice and your musicality, it's your presence on the stage and the way you bring the audience in and captivate them. And I think that's a very similar quality to what Tara has. She and you are both absolutely incredible. And I'm getting old, and I don't want to wait forever before I get you to Vancouver, because your career is rising faster than I can say your name even. Anyway,
oh my goodness.
I took the liberty many months ago of playing the interview or conversation that you had with Zolf Wagner, and where you talked about nerves and fainting and all that. So I don't want to necessarily go over the same ground, but I would love to know how you started, what led you on your path, how you landed up at the College of Music in Cape Town, and I'm also a graduate from the College of Music in Cape Town.
Hey.
And tell me your story.
Oh, my story, in the words of Mimi, my story is short. No, I think, it's a pretty typical story in the sense of coming from South Africa. You come from, I'm sure you can also attest to this, you come from a family where there's always music playing in the background. And especially in my family, it wasn't that there were people who sang professionally. That's not how that worked. But there was always a soundtrack. So I'm fully aware that there is a soundtrack to my life. I don't think there's a single part of my life story where I don't have a song that's associated with it. And, when I was young, it was listening to the music of Motown, rock and roll from my dad, folk rock and roll, and then listening to albums like Graceland from Paul Simon, Cat Stevens. Yeah. These were the long road trips. And I think you know this, those long road trips that you used to take, because not everybody could afford to fly. So, yes. It was long 12, 10-hour road trips of listening to music. And then also there's Haydn symphonies in my memory, because my dad got obsessed with Haydn when I was a child. And so I have that in my ear. And then I have in my memory as well symphonies, Schumann symphony. I've got Mozart symphonies floating around in there. And this was all because my parents, especially my mother, she made sure that music was a part, even though I didn't have music education at school, it was a part of my after school life. So I started taking the violin when I was 5. And then from the violin came piano lessons, came recorder lessons. And then after recorder lessons came going into school choir when I was in primary school, or middle school, as most people will call it in North America. And then from that to chamber choir at school, and then musical theatre came in while I was at high school, and things like Rodgers and Hammerstein and Andrew Lloyd Webber. And then the path to actually studying music came much later, because I was already at Rhodes University studying a journalism degree, and my one of my subjects just wasn't working out for me. So I just decided in my second year, okay, so I'm not going to do this subject anymore, but I need another one to finish my course curriculum. And so I took up music performance. And there I took violin lessons, and to be able to be a part of the music performance course at Rhodes University, you had to have 2 instruments.
Oh,
And
right.
I didn't really feel like doing violin and piano. So I said, oh, well, I've sung in school choirs, and it would be nice to be able to like sing properly. And so I went and I said, I'd like to do singing as my minor instrument. I thought that it was really smart, because I thought to myself, well, I know I need to practice my violin, which takes about, an hour and a half a day. I've also got my journalism coursework that I have to get through. I've got my politics studies, my philosophy studies. So voice, if I can already sing in tune and the lessons are only once a week, half an hour, you don't need to practice that much. And all I need to do is learn how to sing a song. Easy peasy. And by the end of that first year, I really started enjoying my singing lessons. And so I spoke to the singing teacher, and she said, I think you should swap your minor and major instruments around and make violin your minor and singing your major, because then you can have an hour-long singing lesson. Because I was really starting to get excited about singing, because I was really trying to understand the technique involved, and I was really intrigued by the songs that she was giving me to sing. The first few songs that I did were really folk songs. They weren't really opera arias. I think the first opera aria that I ever really learned was Voi che sapete, and then the operetta aria Chadash. So those were the 2 big arias that I learned when I was a student, and I only learned them in like my second year. But the first year, it was just songs, just all these English folk songs. So things like early one morning, just as the sun was rising. Like, that's what I was learning. But I was loving it, because it was just so lovely. But I was also then going into the music library, and I saw this world of vocal repertoire, and it wasn't just, one little shelf of songs. It was shelves. It was its own section of the library. And I'm a library kid. I remember very distinctly being 7 years old, and my mother taking me to the town library to get my first library card. And once I got that library card, I no longer resided in the little patch of earth that I had. I could be anywhere. And that's what happened when I went into this music library at Rhodes. An entire universe just expanded for me. And I was hooked. And then once I started going for my singing lessons really regularly, and I started practicing and really trying and experimenting and really listening to music and looking at scores and trying to understand how things would come from the page into my ears. Like, how was this translation happening? The thing that was exciting me was the space between the page and my ear. There was so much there that I wanted to know, how does that work? And so that's how I then got intrigued by opera and singing. And that led me then to applying to the University of Capetown, to the music college there. And I went for my audition with, the only 4 pieces of real song that I could sing, because don't really have much. And I went and I sang my audition, and I remember standing in front of Virginia David, Sidwell Hartman, God rest his soul, Angelo Gabato.
Oh my God.
Yeah, the crew, the whole crew was there. And I remember, and I think, who else was there? Sarita Stern. They were all sitting there listening to my audition. And at the end of the audition, at the end of my singing, Virginia Davis said to me, okay, so if you were going to come to the school, if we were going to offer you a place, who would you want to study with? Who would you want to work with? And I just remember saying, I don't know, like, what's the correct answer here. So I will work with whoever wants to work with me. If there's a teacher that thinks that they can help me, then that's where I'll go. And I remember her looking at me and saying, if you want to do this job, you never do that. You tell the people what you want. And then you give them permission to say yes or no. But you never let someone decide your career for you. That was the first lesson she taught me.
Wow.
You say what you want. So that applies to the audition. You give the aria package of the arias of the roles that you want to sing. They are entitled completely as an audition panel to say, not for me. But no one gets to tell you who you are as an artist. So you walk into a room knowing what you want. And if they say no, they say no. You go to the next room. But that I learned. And so I looked at it, I said, well, then I want to work with you. Because I think that her telling me that just made me go, oh, that's a woman you can learn from. Go to her. She will teach you. And she taught me. So that's how I ended up at UCT.
Oh my God. So who was the dean in those days? Was it James May or was it Peter Glatzo?
I think those were the last couple of years of Peter Glatzo. I think Peter Glatzo left a couple of years after I finished there. Because after Peter Glatzo, who was there? Was it Hendrik? Did Hendrik Hofmeyer take over then after Peter, I think?
I don't know, because I know James May took over at some point.
Everything's completely confusing for me, but I know Peter Glatzo was in charge at that time. Yeah, Peter Glatzo was the head there. So,
he's my cousin.
It's a small world after all.
It is a tiny world. And you know who else I discovered I'm related to, but quite a while ago, is Simon Kinleyside.
Stop it.
Simon's great-grandmother and my grandmother were sisters.
My word.
So,
oh my goodness.
It is a small world.
I hope you use that cousin card to make him come sing for you guys in Vancouver.
Oh, yeah. He's an unforgettable character. He's just larger than life.
Even though he's such a larger than life person, he's so down to earth.
Yes.
And so kind. So when I did my first debut on like the international stage as Contessa in Munich, he was the Conte. He was the Count.
Oh my goodness.
And he drew me the cutest little caricature of Mozart conducting Le Nozze di Figaro, which I have framed up in my workroom. And it's one of my most cherished possessions is this little caricature that he gave me, that he literally just drew randomly during one rehearsal, and he was like, 5 minutes later, after the break was over, he goes, oh, I do this because it was something that just popped in my head about you. So here you go. Oh. And it was this beautiful little caricature, and I love it.
Oh, so tell me, Golda, how, so when you graduated from the College of Music in Cape Town, what was the next step, and how did you land up at Harrison Parrott and all that?
So the next step was then, I did my 2 years of study at UCT, and I was in the opera studio at Cape Town Opera. So I was in Cape Town altogether. I think I was there about 3 years, because my final year at UCT overlapped with my first year in the opera studio. And then in my final year at the opera studio, I remember sitting down with Virginia Davids, and we were having the conversation of, well, now what next? As one does, what next? And she said, well, I think you've got to work. You've got to go to Germany. She's like, there's no work in South Africa. Go to Germany. And I just remember looking at her and going like, I can't go to Germany. Don't speak German. I can't do that. What am I going to do in Germany? And she said, well, if you're not going to go to Germany, you need to figure out what you want to do. So you have to sit down and make your plan. But she said, in the end, you have to end up in Europe. That's the only way that you're going to be able to do this if you want. And she said, this is only if you want to do this job as a career. If you don't, if you just want to sing on the side and do a couple of gigs and be a journalist, that's a choice and you can do that. And so I really sat down and thought long and hard about what I wanted to do. And I came up with the idea that I still didn't feel very secure on stage, bearing in mind all the stuff about like my stage fright that I used to have.
Yes.
And I knew that it felt rather still hit or miss a lot of the time. It felt like I could do things, but then there would be days when they just didn't work out. And so I'm the kind of person, I probably get this from my dad, I need a system, so that when things don't feel great, you can still do good work. That was kind of what I wanted to be able to do. So I thought to myself, well, I need more education. And then I was at an awards show for the Cannas. I don't know if you know this, for the Klein Kunstefees in Oudtshoorn. They have this award show that happens for Afrikaans art or arts. And so we had done the opera by Thomas Reiner, Valley Song, based on the Athel Fugard play. We had played that opera then at the Oudtshoorn Festival, and I got nominated for, best performance by a newcomer at the festival. And I was like, oh, lovely. And you get invited to this fancy schmancy luncheon with lots of famous South African artists, all the arty people. And you get invited to this fancy lunch. And you know me, you don't know me, but me, I never say no to a free meal. So.
You know what? Especially in Oudtshoorn.
You never say no to a free meal when there's good food on the plate. So I went to this, and I got seated at a table with another young musician, Abigail Bischokovic, and she plays the violin. And she and her brother had been nominated because they had done this wonderful duo recital with like great piano and violin music. And so she and I were sitting next to each other, and we were the two youngsters at this table. And so we just spoke to each other. And so we were getting to know each other. And so, as you do, you ask someone, so what are your future plans? And she said, oh, what I'm doing is, and I said, well, I'm still doing a couple of gigs, but I'm currently trying to figure out what I want to do, but I think I want to go to school. And so she said, oh, that's really cool. And I said, what are you doing? And she said, oh, I'm going to Juilliard. And I remember I looked at her and I said, I'm so sorry, what? She said, yeah, I'm going to the Juilliard School of Performing Arts. And I burst out laughing and I said, no, that can't be true. That's a fake school. And she said, no, it's not. And I said, no, it is. It's that school that they do in all the movies. So all these dance movies where everybody's auditioning, or movies about musicians, they're all auditioning to go to Juilliard. I was like, it's a fake school. And she said, no, it's not. It's a real place.
Golda.
I honestly, until that moment, I had no idea that Juilliard was a real school. So I remember going home after, and then the best part of it was she said, you should come. That was it. She says, you should come. It's not hard. For Abigail, it wasn't a thing that it could be difficult to get into Juilliard. She was like, oh, well, if you want to go there, you should go. And so I remember I went home and I started researching it. And something inside me just went, yeah, okay, I'm going to go to Juilliard. And so I applied. So the first application I did was they have this thing called the Artist Diploma of Opera Studies, which is sort of like a young artist program. But so I applied for that because it seemed like the right fit for me, because they would also give you a stipend. So it meant that I didn't have to pay to be there. Everything was free. So I was like, if it's free, like the food, I'll be there. And so I remember I applied, I put together my little audition CD. I got all my letters of recommendation, sent it through. And then I waited. And at the end of the application process, I got an email with, "We regret to inform you, you've not been accepted for the artist diploma." And I was really heartbroken. And I cried for like a full day. 24 hours later, another email comes through from the vocal arts department saying, "We were really impressed with your application, but we find that your level of education is not yet where we could feel comfortable offering you a place in the artist diploma program. But we would recommend that you apply for either a Master of Music or a Graduate Diploma of Opera Studies at Juilliard, and then come to the school, come to the audition." And so they said, but that would mean that I had like 1 week to do the whole application process. And then so I had 24 hours to decide if I was going to apply again, and then put together my whole application, which now included not only letters of recommendation plus recordings, because I had to record extra songs. It also included a 2-page essay that you had to write. And I remember I sweated buckets over that essay. I had to write that essay in basically 72 hours. And then it all had to be handed in online.
Now, hang on a second. The essay, could it be on any topic you wanted?
No, they gave you 3 topics. And I think, there were various topics, but the 3 topics that I could choose from. But I think the topic I chose was why I felt that the art form that I was interested in. So explain why the art form that you're interested in pursuing is relevant to you as a person and your culture. And so I found that to be really interesting, because that's a question that I think we as classical musicians actually have to grapple with every day, because what we practice is history, but we're trying to have that history influence our culture, and we're trying to have a conversation across time from where we are interpreting the music, interpolating the music and what's on the page, and then helping it give new meaning to our current context. So I found that to be a very interesting question to ask people. And so I went like full on philosophy major, politics major, like my whole previous degree came into complete use in that moment of 72 hours, because I'd done all this kind of reading about this. And I find that, and interestingly enough, I find that question is the thing that consistently drives me as an artist. It's the reason that Jonathan and I choose the programs that we choose, because we're trying to figure out how this music can still remain relevant. Are these stories, are these songs, are these poems, are these operas still relevant to who we are as people? And I just remembered once I wrote that essay, I just thought to myself, that's going to be a question I'm going to ask myself for the rest of my life as an artist. And the day I cannot answer that question, that's the day I know I can't do the job anymore, because there's no other way to create art, because art does not reside in a vacuum. Art is not history on a wall. Art is history in this moment, because it's consistently speaking to you. And I found that question really exciting. And I just remember thinking to myself, listen, if these people are asking these kinds of questions and I'm not even there, what kind of questions will we be asking if I get to the school? Yeah, and then I went to Juilliard in a nutshell.